Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Friday Debate podcast by Android Authority, discussing topics in Android every week. This week we have our first ever episode, so if you are one of our first listeners on this podcast, thank you so much for listening, and I want to extend a quick thanks to our guests here. I am, of course, Joshua Vergara from Android Authority. What's going on, everybody? And I am your host every single week as we take a topic that we otherwise have on the AndroidAuthority.com website for the Friday debate, and we talk its ears off. Or as I said in our description for our pilot episode, if you have hopefully enjoyed it, we beat the proverbial dead horse on this topic. But nonetheless, welcome to all of you who are here. And before we even get started, I want to go down the line and introduce our great guests for this week. I'm going to go ahead and name off the three people we have on the panel this week. We'll start off with our lead editor, Andrew Grush.
Hey everyone, the name is Andrew Grush, or for those here at Team AA, I'm actually better known as Grushy. Some of you may already be familiar with my writing on Android Authority. I was also on last week's pilot for those who watched it. For those new to the show, I'm the US Senior Editor, like Josh mentioned. Basically, that means I do a combination of writing, editing, and I help with the day-to-day management of the website. I've been with Android Authority for about 2.5 years now, and this is absolutely the best job I've ever had in my life.
Nice. And like I also put in the description from the pilot episode from CES 2015, Grush is also the architect of the Friday debate topic that you may be reading on our website. So the topics that are occurring not only on the website but in the Friday debate podcast itself are going to be the work of Grush and on some level me, but also the rest of our team looking for a great topic to bring to you guys. Let's go ahead and move on over to another writer from our team, Jonathan Feist.
Well, hello, thank you. How's everybody doing? Again, Jonathan Feist. I'm one of the writers with the team here. Of course, we cover all the news coverage. I've got the evening shift, so you'll see me, first thing in the morning if you're in the UK or Asia, and middle of the night if you're in the United States. One of my favorite things around here is every Thursday I do an Android customization post. Just a little bit of tidbits, tips, and tricks on how to customize your device. And so far we've been avoiding the root topics, but root's coming up soon, so stay tuned.
Very nice. And also Jonathan has a, what's the term I'm looking for here? Not a pet name, but we have a nice little name that we have for him. Last name Feist, so we call him Feisty also. So, and then of course we have one of our YouTubers, our app guy on over here, Joseph Hindy.
Hey everybody, I'm Joe Hindy, the Android Authority app guy. I am also the apps editor over at Android Authority. I do all the app lists and app reviews and video game reviews. Like Grushy said, man, this is the best job ever because I literally get paid to play video games, and I know a lot of people are envious about that. And a fun fact here. With this, I will have co-hosted or been a guest on every single Android Authority weekly show, and I remain the only YouTuber to do that. So, super happy to be here.
Oh, nice. It's really great to have you guys on here. By the way, I was about to say, having Joe on here is going to be really awesome. We're going to have probably this particular group on most weeks, but we will have some roving guests in and out as time goes on. But nonetheless, we are here on our first episode, and I'm really happy to have Joe here because he and I actually have done a lot of YouTube videos together where typically when I have to do the editing for it, I have to have that bleep button ready from time to time. But nonetheless, we are, of course, here at the Friday debate. And let's go ahead and jump into our topic. Let's not even waste any time. Here is what Grush had for this week's Friday debate topic that you will be able to read today on Friday, of course. And it has to do with Project Ara. With Ara, Project Ara, that is, expected to arrive in Puerto Rico in a pilot program later this year, Ara is finally almost ready for prime time. Or is it? Do we think that modular phones can find success in the market? And I think that's where most of our discussion is going to come from. But if it isn't ready for the market to find success, what will hold it back? All right, so what we're looking at here is basically a phone that you can put together on the fly, and you can take out parts, you can put parts back into it, and it's a different take on what a smartphone can be. Very similar to what a computer can be. But it's starting off in Puerto Rico, and I know Andrew already said that he had a couple of pieces of information about why Puerto Rico was that place.
Sure, okay, so really, Puerto Rico might seem odd choice at first, but the biggest thing is it's a U.S. territory, so that means it's the perfect test market because it's still under the FCC regulations and stuff, and so that means that they can kind of prepare it for the U.S. market in a limited setting. And beyond that, actually, Puerto Rico is a mobile-first nation, meaning that the majority of people are using smartphones to get onto the internet, and so that makes it, a prime target. And it's because of the way Puerto Rico's set up. They're actually going to be delivering parts instead of having a online channel initially. They're going to deliver it through food trucks. Actually, they're going to have a set of food trucks. They're going to go around and let people try out the products hands-on, and then buy products. And heck, they're even going to have 3D printers in the back, so they're going to be able to customize it on the fly. And Puerto Rico just really works out well for that. Not to mention, Puerto Rico has really good relationships as far as with shipping across the world. So modular developers from all over are going to be able to easily get parts there. And so that's kind of the reason why they chose Puerto Rico. It might sound like an odd choice, but it makes sense.
Oh, okay. Well, food trucks. That's wow. Are you gonna be able to get food with them, or is it literally?
No, well, obviously they're not really food trucks, but the style of food trucks that you have in those countries where they come. It's going to be one of those basically, except for it's going to be technology.
Okay. Well, yeah, Puerto Rico does make quite a bit of sense, but let's go ahead and get into our actual discussion. Modular phones, and specifically Project Ara. Let's start off with Joe over there. Let's see what you have to say about modular phones and what it might mean for the smartphone industry.
When I think of like modular phones, I think of like desktop PCs. Like what desktop PCs are to computing is essentially what I think Project Ara would be to smartphones. Where like people, it's not. I don't think it's going to be super popular. I think it might hit the mainstream, but I don't think it's going to have the kind of growth that we see with things like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking here. It's midnight where I am, so I'm a little blank right now. But Am I still in the call?
Yeah, no, you're here.
All right, cool.
Yeah,
Making sure because everything blanked out for a second. Sorry. But no, I think it's going to be something like desktop computers where the people who are going to use Project Ara are people who are tinkerers. People who really want something more powerful, something upgradable. Something that they can keep around for years and years and years, as opposed to most people who are going to upgrade every couple of years like they do with their laptops. I do think that the thing that's going to hold it back though is Android, as in like the operating system, because in most cases Android is made for the specific phone that it runs on at like at a kernel level, like all the drivers, the camera drivers, the the CPU stuff and all that stuff is made specifically for that one Android device. And if they want Aura to to be something that people keep for years and years and years, they're going to have to start coming out with like a version of Android that's like a desktop operating system that has all of those drivers already there, and they can just install it on anything. And so I think that's going to be the big thing for it. But that's I might be way off base. I'm not 100% certain on that, but
well, I was
think about it.
gonna put out this notion like, doesn't the ecosystem sort of already allow for sort of the in and outs of an operating system along with the processor, because we have processors like the Snapdragon series that can be outfitted with every single band, and it also would be able to take on pretty much any Android iteration. As long as we don't use particular types of processors that require a very specific type of kernel, don't you think that maybe just having the Qualcomm basis be enough for Android to really survive on this Project Ara ecosystem?
Oh no, definitely. Like we're heading in that direction already. With like you said, with the Qualcomm processors that have all the various radio bands built into it. But we were talking about it before the show. Or in the chats about how like there's going to be the K1. The K1 processor for Project Ara, right?
That's true.
So so we have NVIDIA's K1 and then Snapdragon, and it requires two different sets of software. So in order to switch one out and put one in, it would essentially require someone to reinstall Android, unless Android were able to be run on both. No matter which one you installed it on, it would still work just fine. Kind of like how you do with Windows now, where you can install it on AMD or Intel. It doesn't matter because the basic code is there for both of them. And I think that's something that Android's going to have to do with so many different, especially with stuff like cameras, and then at least two different kinds of processors, and all the various hardware that goes into these things. It's going to have to come to that point where it's going to be like installing a desktop OS, where it doesn't matter what's in Project Ara, it's still going to boot and it's still going to run.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the the biggest hurdle. Although if it's getting this close to being released, it's probably something they've already been working on anyway.
Yeah, they have.
Okay. How about you, Grushy? How do you feel about maybe one day using a phone that is a conglomeration of pieces?
Well, as a computer nerd who still builds his own, PC rigs, I absolutely love the idea. But first, I kind of want to address some of the things that Joe said. First of all, yes, I can see it being appealing to the PC type, who likes to build their own stuff. But actually, that's not what Google's really going for. Ideally, if you look at like their website and stuff, they keep talking about how they want to use it to reach, the next 5 billion. That's their big mantra. And the idea is that someone who doesn't have a lot of money could buy the base unit for around $50, and then it would basically just come with a basic processor, a screen that would be low res, and just everything needed to get started. And then as they saved up money, they could slowly but surely add on things. And they're actually probably marketing more towards emerging markets initially. And so that's, and I'm not sure how much success they'll find in that. It really comes down to how easy they make it. And actually that leads to something else he was talking about. It comes down to Android. Because even with Windows, you have to, if you bring in a new part, you have to still, there's driver issues, there's installation issues, sometimes you run into troubleshooting. Is Android going to be able to adjust to that well enough? And, they are working on it. They have a special version of Android L that they're using as the basis that allows for hot swapping of parts. But I'm just not sure if Android is designed to handle this. And I'm sure they're thinking about that. But so basically what I'm saying is that the aim that they're going for is the emerging markets. And I'm just not sure if it's going to hit there. But I do think it has some potential for the nerd types. It comes down to logistics. I'm not sure if they can pull off, making the Android work well enough for this kind of, platform.
Well, I mean, that emerging markets comment is really interesting. We're going to come back to that, but I do want to get Feisty's thoughts on Project Ara in general. What do you think this particular ecosystem might have to offer us?
Well, jumping off of what the other guys have said already, exactly with the operating system and Android itself being the limitation. Of course, Google is keeping tabs on everything, and it looks like they're going to control all of the parts through possibly the Play Store or another outlet like that. So I'm not so much worried about that. The custom OS, the version of L, like you were saying, that would pull it all together. But I think the real key thing here that will make or break Project Ara is the hot swappability. Obviously, it's going to have it, which is a positive. Without it, I cannot imagine people wanting to shut down their device each time so that they can swap a piece and move forward. That hot swappability will be a key factor. The tech crowd that's interested in this device, that I think is going to be pretty much the same crowd as those interested in the Raspberry Pi device and the Arduino kits. And those things are great devices. They're a ton of fun, but I really think they're limited in scope. It's not exactly a general public that's going out and buying those things. So I have my concerns over Ara.
Yeah, I think I might agree with you, John, because I think one of the main aspects of the whole modular phone type deal is that, well, I mean, customization is going to be very big for this particular device, and like people have been reporting on already, the whole customization process for it kind of takes on a Moto Maker feel, and that's kind of great because Moto Maker really made the Moto X one of the best phones over the last couple of years. But the problem with making it into a modular sense is that, well, who knows what type of modules we're going to even have in order to create the phone that we want, and who knows what will happen when third parties kind of get in on this. Will everything come from just one manufacturer? And even then, what modules are going to be made available? Because from what we've already seen so far in these prototypes is that we have things like the Tegra K1, which actually sounds pretty awesome, even though the X1 was just announced, and that would be even better. But we have 720p displays and whatnot. And coming off of Andrew's side of things, I do think that it will become a nice emerging market product, but I don't think that's where it's going to really... I think it's going to greatly evolve from that. I mean, when we talk about price point, everyone's saying that a modular phone could be low priced, but if you want to go above and beyond, just how much are we going to have to pay for these different parts?
Well, if I can jump back in there, I cannot stop thinking about Google Glass. The pilot project for that one, Explorer Edition, was still $1,500. And you might think that Project Ara and Project Glass have about the same chances of survival, and well, Glass is essentially being shut down here for a little bit.
Yeah, and it's nice that it's going to be in Puerto Rico. I do think that's a good thing because that kind of makes it seem like that it's going to be for emerging markets, but I really don't think that it's ever going to stay there. There's going to be phone envy no matter what, but like as far as these modules are concerned, we haven't seen too many of them yet. What are what would a phone look like with all of the modules that you would want to have in there? We already have a lot of examples in the smartphone market of these high-end devices, but what of these parts would you mix and match together? Let's start off with Andrew on that one.
Well, as far as you can mix and match just about anything, there's different sizes, and it goes onto the back, and there's a magnetic force that keeps them in place. I think the front uses pins, but the back is where most of the customization happens. And there's going to be initially around 20 to 40 different modules, and it's not just going to be like processors and RAM. There's also going to be like different kinds of sensors, things that could be specialized for workplaces, but things that could be specialized for home use. And the base, which is what gets me concerned, how they're going to make all that work. But yeah, basically they're going to allow you to swap any kind of part, and basically there's no limits to what someone can develop for it, which is a fascinating concept. But once again, logistics I think is going to get in the way.
Yeah.
How are they going to manage all this? How are they going to make sure everything's working right? Like Feisty did mention that they're going to do this through a storefront at some point, which is true. But even so, just testing all of it for all the different configurations. Because you have, let's say at some point you have 100 different modules. They're going to have to test each of these in different scenarios with different pairings. And I think it's going to be a mess. I think it's a great idea, but I think it's going to be a mess.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that I kept thinking of while we were talking about this, was just what will the other manufacturers have to say? And will Project Ara be strictly a Google project that isn't really outsourced out? You know what I mean?
They're allowing anyone, but the frames initially are going to be built by Google. So the main frame, the Spiral 2 is the newest one. That's going to be by Google, but the modules can be by anyone. But what I'm really, you were talking about how you could see it moving into, outside of the emerging markets, which is true, but the big concern there is how carriers will react and how will they play a part. Are they going to get on board where they're designing their own modules? I could see Verizon doing that, having giant Verizon logos everywhere on the back of the modules.
Oh, Jesus God, that'd be horrible. The Verizon bloatware module?
Yep.
Oh, God, that'd be terrible.
How great would that be, though, if all of the bloatware from like AT&T or Verizon was just on one little module that you could just pluck out?
Oh, dude,
yeah, good luck with that.
I just had a great video idea. If they do that, we have to do the Smash the Verizon bloat module video. I'll do it. I'll volunteer to do it. I have a sledgehammer. I think people would really love that.
I think that'd be great. But I love where that's going. Like that's the thing that I can't get out of my head when I keep thinking about Project Ara is there's so much room for creativity and creation, but there's also so much room for regulation. And I'm really scared of what, you're right, these carriers would do with Project Ara. That's where I think the major pitfall will be.
They're not going to like it.
They're not going to like it, huh? You don't think so?
Not at all. I mean, unless they can find a way to control it, and I'm not sure. It kind of comes down to what Google, allows them to do or doesn't allow them to do. But the idea of having to, certify all these parts and make sure they're approved is Verizon. It's going to be bad for the carriers like Verizon, but it's going to be bad for consumers too, I think, in a way, because is Verizon going to have lockouts where only certain modules work that they've approved for their network? Because Verizon is one, and so is AT&T. They all are, where they like to test everything very, vigorously, and if it doesn't meet their standards, and so are they going to allow any old module to work with it? That's where it gets, at first, I'd say into the very foreseeable future, probably 5-10 years, I think it's going to be an unlocked only thing. I don't think carriers are going to even be involved.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot. I imagine people are going to have just like the skeleton available because that might be all they can afford at the moment. And then just kind of put things in little by little. Joe, anything to weigh in on here about availability, rather, of Project Ara, given carriers and whatnot?
I think Grushy's pretty much right. I think it's going to be one of those unlocked things. It's going to be just like the Nexus was when it first came out. The Nexus 1 was only unlocked. You could only really buy that, from Google's website. And then, it wasn't until, like the Nexus S that you could actually buy it on a carrier. I think it's going to be exactly the same thing with Project Ara. I think it's going to be one of those things where you have to buy it straight from Google. You're going to have to buy the parts, at least the initial parts, straight from Google. and then as it evolves, it'll start falling into more hands. You start getting it in more places. But no, I think Rushy's absolutely correct on that one.
So I want to, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind posing a question.
Go for it, man. Yeah, any of you guys, seriously, just like chime in whenever you wish.
So, I've heard you all say, hey, it's a cool idea, for the nerd side of me to be able to build parts. How much would you be willing to pay for such a thing? I mean, what would you consider, like, for the base, for the processors? I mean, how much, to build the phone you want, how much would you be willing to sink in?
This requires a lot of knowledge as to how much these parts are even required.
Of course,
how much
true. I'm just saying,
them,
ballpark. I mean, do you feel that that to build a complete phone, should it be pretty close to what you're paying for a flagship, or are you willing to pay $1,000 plus?
I mean, that's really interesting. How about with the price that you kind of put out there? What are the modules you would put in that hopefully create that price point? How about that?
Gotcha.
From my perspective, it would depend on the benefits. Because, you go and dump $1,500 into a desktop, and you're going to be able to play, like, the latest games at, flawless 1080, sometimes even, 2K, 4K at, 30, 60 frames per second, depending. And there's value in spending that much in a desktop PC. And even, spending $2,000 on a laptop, there's value in that. And I think the question, it's not necessarily like what would you pay to build a Project Ara phone, but I think the better question is what value is there in spending that much more? Because I know that one of the things, is Grushy mentioned, like, for workplace. So, like, if you're a handyman and you can turn your, all right, this is a horrible example, I want to go with it anyway, but you can turn your phone into, like, a Geiger counter by popping in a module, that person would probably be able. Yeah, I would definitely pay $200 for a Geiger counter module. But for me, I'm a gamer. All flagship Android phones currently play all of the games. So what's the benefit to spending extra money if I'm not going to get any extra benefit from anything that's out right now?
Yeah, I think it does matter whether or not a, let's say, mid-range phone, it doesn't cost more than current mid-range offerings. And I think that's going to be sort of a key when it comes to whether or not this kind of ecosystem is going to be successful, at least from the outset. Feisty, what does a Project Ara phone look like for you at what price point?
See, this is a tough one. I've thought about this a lot, actually, and there is no possible way for me to build a Project Ara device. I would need a 14-inch tablet to have enough space for all of the pieces that I want.
Nice.
And I think that that speaks again to the hot swappability of the pieces. However, just at Christmas time here, I picked up a few little phones. I mean, they were $30 a piece. Wrote about them on the site. They're actually pretty good little phones, and I'm using them for a specific purpose. One is an MP3 player, one takes pictures. I've already got these cheap devices. They're set to the side. They're focus driven. I think if I were building a Project Ara device, I might have to buy or build more than one so that, again, I can have these multiple devices with specific purpose. So that becomes a problem for me because, well, like you're saying, price tag. If every module is anywhere from $20 to $300, that price tag's gonna be over $1,000 in no time.
Yeah, I just really think that the price will rocket so easily when it comes to a lot of these parts, And you were talking about having different phones for different devices for different situations. I mean, isn't that sort of the point of a modular phone? However, is being able to take out, let's say, let's say you take out, like, I was thinking about in Joe's case, what if you wanted to really test out an app for performance? You would take out his Snapdragon 600, which costs, let's say, $200, and then pop in the Tegra X1 that hopefully one day will come in, and then you can really do some benchmarking on an app. You really think you would need more than one skeleton for everything you do, Feist?
Yes, absolutely. As is, I'm already using more than one phone, and they serve different purposes. And I mean, again, I'm holding down 16 different jobs. Okay, not that many, but it feels like it some days. So, you can only install so many Google accounts onto a single device. And, while one device is making a phone call, you need that next device to be doing something else. And then, if you're using one device as an MP3 player, it's on the other side of the room, it's hooked up to the stereo, you're not taking calls on that. So one device, one Project Ara device with hot swappable pieces, again, not for me. maybe as one of my devices, even my main device.
Oh wow, I wasn't expecting that to be the way that you took it. Like that's really cool though. That's really cool though that you know yourself so well as a user to be able to know that. But wow, that's interesting. I imagine you have like
example of an extreme multitasker.
Exactly. You have like a phone for every little task. It's like you have like I imagine you like surrounded by 10 phones right now, all doing something different.
There's only 6. Sorry.
Only 6.
All right. How about you, Grushy? What is your price point for something like this?
Honestly, I'm not rich, so it comes down to what I can afford. But I would easily pay $800 or so, maybe even $1,000, if I could have enough components for. Where I see the potential in Ara is okay. So I have my base phone. It has a Snapdragon, 805, 810, whatever. By the time I get to it, it has a base amount of RAM, 3 gigs maybe. It has basic storage. But I'm going to go camping this weekend, let's say, and so I'm going to have an actual decent camera with me, so I'm not going to be using the camera on my phone. So I'm going to take that module out. I'm going to put in an extra battery or so. I'm going to move things around, and just the ability to say, hey, now I have 2, 3, 4 days of battery life because I've loaded this thing up. Maybe I've put in a weaker processor because I'm not going to need that, but I want good battery life, so if something happens, I can make a call, make a text. That's really why I think Ara is amazing, is you can adjust the phone's hardware based on your use case. There might be times where I need, the best processor, and I put that in, or I might need more battery life, or I might need a good camera. And that's where I think Ara will have a lot of potential for the nerd type. For the merging type, it's going to just come down to, hey, I can slowly but surely update this, and they're not going to want to pay a lot, they're not going to need very powerful processors, and I think that Ara can cater to both sides.
Yeah, I think that's where the phone envy is going to come in, though. You're going to have those people that are like, oh, I got this Snapdragon 400. I keep thinking of Project Ara in terms of what I put in there will make me feel like I have a certain type of phone. So let's say someone makes a Moto G Ara, and they work with that, and one day they're like, okay, I got a little bit more money, or I really want this boost in productivity or processing power. I'll throw in that Snapdragon 805 and make this a Moto X. And I do think that there's a lot of benefit to something like that. I also think that hopefully the price point is going to be very reasonable depending on the parts that you get. Maybe I really think that they're going to kind of take advantage of that. The fact that someone doesn't have to pay for everything right away, so they can I guess overprice certain parts, so you have to settle. I'm a little bit cynical like that. I'm like that sometimes, where I really feel like I have to settle for certain parts or certain things before I can really go to the upper echelon. But it's funny how, I feel like Andrew Grush, the way that you put it, that's really what Google's trying to go for, is that whole idea of slowly upgrading. And then Google's probably listening to this right now and thinking Jonathan Feist is not one of those customers that we want. But, so let's get a little bit creative here. I want to know what kind of modules do you want on your phone? Grush was talking about, I don't really need a camera. Let's reach for the brass ring here. What are the things that you really want on your phone that may have been there before or is not there now? Something that you really would want to put on yours. No expense spared.
Something I was thinking about while these guys were talking was how cool would it be to have like a module that would allow you to switch like your entire Android experience from, say, your phone to your smartwatch or to your Google Glass or something like that, and be like, okay, well, I'm done with Google Glass for right now. I'm gonna pop this module out, stick it back in my phone, and I have those apps and that data available to me whenever I need it. And I thought that'd be something I was just kind of working with it in my brain. It's literally 4 minutes old. But, to have like, have a module in my Android Wear smartwatch, pull it out, pop it in my phone, install some apps on there, do some customization and stuff like that, pop it back out, put it back in the watch, body, a Project Ara Wear, I guess. And
it does not roll off the tongue very easily.
No, it doesn't. But, and just be able to customize, instead of, thinking about one device that you can put everything into, think of it more as like you have 2 or 3 devices that you can interchange everything with. Like, something like what Feist would, want, just not with multiple phones, but with just multiple gadgets in general. Like, pop out a module, stick it in your car, and all of a sudden you have access to your Google Play Music, stuff like that. that I thought would be really kind of cool, and that would be something that I would spend a lot of money on.
Feisty's probably over there like, no, that's too much work. When I get in my car, when I get in my car, there's already a phone there.
Yeah, that's the car phone.
You know it.
He's got one glued on the dashboard, another one taped on the visor, and pulls it down, and there's the navigation.
The story's coming soon. Show you how it's
All right,
done.
I don't think I really want to know the answer to this, but is there one in the bathroom too? Ready to go?
Oh, that's like the 12-inch Samsung Note tablet.
True, that's where the tablet comes into play.
No comment.
That's a great idea, though, being able to hot swap from one apparatus to another. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around what a Project Ara would even look like. A Project Ara, whatever they would call it. I imagine it would have to be pretty big to be able to hold something like that. We're talking like 2050, like, but when computing finally gets that small, I suppose.
I mean, it wouldn't be like a permanent thing when you stick it into your phone. Like, I'd imagine just having it pretty much the size of an LG G watch and just being able to like pop off the screen. But like the screen also contains all of the circuitry underneath for the the storage and what have you. And then when you pop it into the phone, the phone has the RAM and the processor already, so you don't need to take that with you. You keep all that stuff in the watch and then just take the removable stuff and then being able to, I don't know. It's just, again, 5 minutes now I've been thinking about this. So, but
Yeah.
I can't imagine it would be that big if they did it right. I mean, some of those modules are pretty, freaking small. It's not like these things are the size of coffee tables.
True, and honestly, that even in under 5 minutes, that already sounds like a pretty well hashed out idea. It's just a matter of obviously the R&D. And, but let's talk about a smartphone here, Joe. What's the one module you gotta have on the back of that phone, or the front if you want to talk about the display?
That's a really good question. Given what I do with my Android devices, I would want the best conceivable CPU/GPU, either combination or individually. And I actually hope that's something they do, is separate them and allow us to upgrade our GPU and CPU separately, because that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Just like a desktop. But I would want the best of the best in there, because if there's anything I can't stand, it's game lag, especially on Android, where you can't just like turn down the graphics on most games to get the frame rates up. So I was playing like Riptide GP2 on my Note 3, and it stuttered once, and I almost threw the damn thing against the wall because I was like, "No, you're a Note 3. You do not do that to me." So that's what I would do.
You're a stutter Nazi. That's why. Like, it's just like the moment you see like a little bit of stutter on like a TouchWiz thing, like, nope, worst thing ever.
I can handle it in the UI. It's not so bad, but in games, it's like, come on, for real.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, cool. Well, I agree there, definitely. How about Feisty over there? What's the one thing you need to have on the back of your Ara?
I would actually like a full I/O panel. I want USB ports. I want HDMI out.
Wow.
I want,
Of course, that's what Feisty says.
Well, yeah, it's tough sometimes. A lot of these phones that they don't connect to anything. Sometimes a physical connection is nice to have, and for me, that's a major disadvantage to a lot of Android devices. Now, again, you wouldn't want to use that all the time, and certainly when you're on the go, it doesn't much matter. But I spend most of my time at the house, sitting at the office, and connecting to the stereo is important. Connecting to an external monitor is very important to me.
There you go. That was what I was going to ask. So what things exactly are going to be connecting to here? And you said the monitor and stereo and whatnot. But if you have like a full panel with like USB ports and whatnot, are you transferring data back and forth a lot, or is that what the idea is there?
Well, there is some data. Of course, we do a lot of screenshots and having to transfer those, but wireless is easy enough for those. Specifically, I think of the media. I'm always listening to music. I'm surprised you can't even hear it in the background right now. I'm
Which
kidding.
phone?
I turned it off.
Which phone is playing that right now?
Actually, I find the LG devices have some fairly decent. Now, I would love high fidelity. That would be very nice. And there again would be another chip that I would want to go with that is, I don't want just plain old MP3 playback. I want some high-end lossless audio.
FLAC, right?
Well, I get a lot of flack over that. No, sorry, bad joke.
Very nice.
Puns are punny.
It's interesting you bring up the audio part because really one of the modules that you're going to be having to put on the back of there might be a speaker grill, for example. And what I noticed, at least on the front of these, is this ecosystem is going to take on an identity of its own. There's really only room for a screen up front. You can't really find space for like a boom sound speaker front facing, unless I'm wrong.
That's actually looking at the skeleton. They did design it so you could have a smaller screen on there that you could have room for. That was in one of the early presentation slides, so it is possible.
Oh, okay. Who knows what they're going to put on the front, though. But that I'm going to save that for after we hear from Grushy, because it's great that you said that, because that's where I would put one of my most wanted modules. But I'll get into that after we hear what Grushy's Ara would look like. What's the one module you got to have?
Wait, hold on 1 second before Grushy starts. I know exactly what module Feisty wants on the back of his phone. A whole second phone.
Hey, perfect.
Have one
now
phone.
We're talking.
Yeah, have one phone, turn the damn thing over, and there's a whole nother phone with fresh stuff right there.
Brilliant.
Nice.
Should be in
Built
the
by
connector.
Asus. Yeah.
Oh, man, that's true.
All right, sorry, Grushy, bud. Go ahead.
Oh, it's all good. Let's see. Maybe a taser? Hey, we're thinking outside of the box a little bit. Why not? Who doesn't want a taser? No, I mean, in all seriousness, for me, batteries, the more battery life, the better. Coming from a Nexus 5 and having to carry around tons of external battery packs all the time. I mean, I think I had like 4 at CES.
I remember, yeah.
Yeah, I had them like everywhere. I kept plugging them in. And so coming from that, batteries would be very important to me. But, just thinking outside of myself, I just wanted to make the point. Some of the stuff this was just floating around my head when we were talking. Just stuff for like health too, like a glucose monitor, for example, built into the phone.
Oh, that would be great.
That would be awesome.
A man after my own heart. Grushy knows.
That's why. Yeah, that's where it came. Kind of thought.
Grushy's kissing up to me right now, man.
No, it just kind of popped into my head. I was like, hey, that would be kind of cool,
Listeners, for those of you who do not know already, I've said this many times on our channel on YouTube. I am a type 2 diabetic, so I have been very much into the health portion of Android as of late. But yeah, that's definitely. I'm in full agreement on that. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, just all those kind of sensors. There's all sorts of health sensors that can be built in. People who have special, who either have special health needs or special education. There's a lot of room for that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, like a glucose meter. I'm trying to think of what some other ones would be, like a legit heart rate monitor. But I mean, you can't really do that.
Something that's not the cheap little junky ones that Samsung gives us.
Yeah, exactly. No one said like fingerprint scanner rather, or anything like that. But
iris scanner.
An iris scanner, that would be so tight. But you have to turn the phone around and then look into it.
True. Yeah, they'd have to have room on the front for that or something.
Yeah, definitely. I think you won with taser though. I feel.
Yeah,
like.
A taser would be awesome. I mean, who doesn't want a taser?
Just yeah. Yeah, I just imagine like some like 21-year-old like club hopping like girl like walking out of a club like, hold on, Becky, this guy's following me, and turn her phone around and just jab a guy in the ribs with it. Turn back around, talk to her again. But who'd be like, dude, spies would be able to like do all kinds of really awesome stuff with Project Ara. It'd be the James Bond phone.
Exactly.
You have like a laser that can cut things, and like you go to take a picture and it shoots pepper spray, stuff like that.
Didn't they have a taser phone one time though? Wasn't it like the Matrix phone? Like when
there is a taser phone. I'm trying to remember. That was a while back. I remember covering that.
Yeah,
there was one actually.
It was the phone from the Matrix, wasn't it? The second Matrix. I'm trying to remember the the Matrix, the movie, right? And then yeah. So
there was an iPhone case though, or something, or it was I think it was an iPhone case that really exists that had a taser built into it. Yeah, that I remember reading about a while back.
Okay, well that's fine.
So it's been done technically.
Batteries, Grushy, that you mentioned. One report that I read was saying that when you're able to take out when the battery gets down low, the skeleton, or rather the actual driver CPU of the Project Ara phone will be able to draw power from the battery that's about to die, so that you have enough time to remove it and then put another one in.
Yep.
That sounds pretty awesome, I just gotta say. But I mean, it's just another. Okay, one day we're gonna talk about this. I'm sure it's gonna be a Friday debate topic. But I'm really getting sick of all of these different workarounds that all these companies have, when really the main problem we have is batteries are really not where they should be right now. It's like the one piece of a phone that hasn't really evolved over the last
or
however
they're
years.
or they're too worried about thinness, and not that we want brick phones, but I think most of us would be willing to sacrifice a little bit of space for a bigger battery.
Like
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I've had this conversation with a lot of people, across the blogger industry, where they say like, oh, the biggest problem with Android is the OEM skins, or the biggest problem with Android are the cameras aren't as good as iOS. I'm like, no, the biggest problem with Android, and the one that everybody complains about, is the fact that these things die after 16 hours. Mm-hmm. With pretty medium.
Or like 2 hours if you have a Nexus.
Oh.
A 1-year-old Nexus, I can imagine that.
Yeah, the battery's not so. Yeah, it's not so hot anymore. It's starting to have lots of issues. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
I love my Nexus 5, but it's starting to have some problems.
I mean, I remember the Galaxy Nexus was so bad that Sprint was giving out. They were giving out extended batteries for free. I got one. They were like, oh yeah, you can have this extended battery for free, and they just sent it and it fit in the original shell and everything. But that, I totally agree. A lot of people have a lot of problems with Android, but the biggest problem that everybody has is, hey, this battery sucks.
Yeah.
No matter, I have an NVIDIA Shield. I got it 4 days ago. I can kill the thing in 10 hours flat. And it's got I think it's over 5,000 milliamp hours in the batteries. I think it's even larger than that. And I can still kill it in 10 hours. And it's absurd.
Yeah, I can imagine people with Ara phones having a specific pocket in their bag with just a bunch of battery modules.
That would be me.
We need a module that actually will accept all of the other different types of batteries. We've all got the extra batteries from our previous phones and previous lives, and be able to use those instead of having to buy new ones would be nice.
That'd be kind of cool, actually.
That would be kind of cool.
It really would be.
It's a fat module to be able to put in a D battery or like a 9-volt battery.
Off to Kickstarter we go.
Yep.
Well, I guess for me, what I was going to say was, the module that I would really want would be on the front, and that's because I have been very, very open about the fact that I miss old form factors, and one of them happens to be the phone that has a friggin' keyboard.
I knew this was coming.
Exactly. Because back when we were at CES, now this is going to be a little bit controversial, but I was actually saying that I was very close to just going to a local store and picking up the new BlackBerry, because I had the original BlackBerry Bold because that keyboard was just amazing back in the day. And now they have a newer version, and I can talk about BlackBerry right now because you can sideload Android on there. So I'm not really betraying everybody right now. But really, that keyboard is kind of compelling to me. And like I was telling the guys right before our podcast, I actually am about to go through a full review process and vlog about my adventures with the original Google phone, the G1. And this is the one where the screen literally slid out of the way, and there was a full QWERTY keyboard. If I could get a screen like that on my Ara phone, I would love that. But if I could maybe put a little bit of space on the bottom in order to put a full QWERTY keyboard on there, let's just say of BlackBerry quality, then I think that would be really great.
Oh,
I wouldn't even. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, on the subject of the hinging screens, did any of you guys ever use the HTC G2, the successor to the G1?
Mm-hmm.
Right, it had that really unique Z hinge that
it was kind of odd.
Could you imagine that on a Project Ara phone, being able to have a whole second row of modules that you could just slide out and pop back in?
Oh man,
that would be crazy.
Take the keyboard out and just have a whole second row of more module space. I know Josh was talking about the screen that literally slid out of the way, and I was like, well, what if you just put more modules behind it, and still have the screen just kind of slide over? And I mean, that phone would be the size of a Bible, but it would be interesting, I think.
Yeah, our phones are getting big enough as it is, and I really don't imagine that there aren't going to be people out there who just stack on stack on stack modules, And who knows, maybe like Feisty said, Kickstarter. Let's just get over to Kickstarter and someone's going to make a module that will add another panel for modules or something like that.
I think it's that kind of openness of modules that will kind of make or break the emerging markets. Mm-hmm. I think of China, for example, and this may be a bad example, and I'm going here, but you look at all of the copyright violations that happen in China, and I think that would be a huge major factor for Project Ara moving forward. We can get 3D printed modules here. You can get the Verizon logo. You can get a picture of your kitten, your puppy, your child. But I imagine that over in a lot of the Asian markets, you would get the Hello Kitty modules. You would get appropriately the Transformer modules, and I think those could, again, the openness and to be able to downgrade maybe the specifications to bring the price down, but that kind of personalization I think will go big in a lot of those markets.
I do agree. Yeah, there might even be modules that are just made to look. It's like,
Yeah, they actually have talked about that a little bit. Plus, they're going to make it so you can pretty much customize, like any module, you can have the back customized, make it different.
What did they refer to that to as again? The shell, right? The shell for the module, or what? I'm trying to remember.
Well, yeah, the shell is or the frame, or the endoskeleton is the actual thing that all the pieces go into. I can't remember exactly what they're called. I think they just call them modules. There's no name for the actual module itself.
I'm trying to remember. I swear I saw this term where there was it's three things. It's the exoskeleton, the module, and then the thing that goes on top of the module to give it its look. That was the part I can't remember what the term was, but in any case, I do completely agree that that's going to happen one day. It's only a matter of time before something like this is going to turn into a commercialization type of deal, and
which kind of you guys got me thinking. As far as if they're having Kickstarter and all these places, people throwing out modules, Google's probably going to have to, if they're going to make this work, they're probably going to have some kind of like DRM or some kind of like digital rights management that only ones that have been approved by Google will work, because or else Android's not going to be able to handle all that.
Dun dun dun.
Unless and that's kind of what I was getting at, though, was
they're going to have to, yeah.
If it goes through Google and everything has to be, so to speak, DRM'd or approved for copyright decency.
But will that limit things?
I think it'll really block things, especially in the emerging markets. If you look at Disney properties, you go to the Disney store and you buy a baseball cap that's got Mickey on the top. You pay a premium for that, and premium is exactly the opposite of what these emerging markets need.
Yeah, and those companies are going to be the ones who will be able to mark it up. Like that's you pay a little bit more for something that's got Mickey's face on it, or God forbid Frozen, and something like that. Just you got to pay just a little bit more to just have that branding on there. And then it's not a topic we have to get into right now, but just imagine what Ara would look like for kids, and what all of these parents are going to have to deal with in order to create these phones that their kids will enjoy using because of what is on top of them, the branding and all of the stuff that these companies do to them to make them more, let's say, kid friendly. But the same would go for even adults. Like imagine somebody with like logos on the back, or just any company could probably make just their own ways of making of creating a module or whatever cover goes on top of it. And Project Ara, I think, to me, is going to be a very nice way of shaking up the system. But whereas originally, I don't know if everyone remembers this, but originally this was it Indiegogo or was it Kickstarter that this originally was? It was before Project Ara, there was a company that was.
Oh, you're talking about Phone Blocks?
Phone Blocks, there it is.
They were just basically, they had a concept idea, and then Motorola, because they were the ones that were behind this originally, they came out and talked to Phone Blocks, said, hey, actually, we have this, we've been working on this for a while. And they weren't going to announce Project Ara until, I think it was still 6 months or so out from being announced. But since Phone Blocks had already given them the perfect introduction, basically, they started teaming up. And since then, Phone Blocks has been basically working with Google now, since, Motorola is no longer part of Google, and they've been doing a lot of updates. They you go to their site and they'll have all these updates for what Google is doing with Project Ara. And so it started with Phone Blocks, but it wasn't like an open source project. It was just more like a concept. They were like, hey, this is what we think would be cool.
Oh, okay.
And they wanted to get people interested in the idea. They were trying to generate, and that's why, like, I remember when we first covered this, we were like, that's a pipe dream, that will never happen. But then all of a sudden Motorola came out and said, hey, we're doing it. It was like, wow, okay, I guess this can happen.
True, and what came with it was the backing and also all the pitfalls of being part of a huge corporation. Is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. And it'll be really interesting to see where this comes out. Do you guys think that if it's going to come out in Puerto Rico, then what's to stop any of us even from just getting one from there and going straight to the source and go ahead and do like a preliminary review on it? I'm sure a lot of people in the outlets and media outlets are going to go ahead and find a way to get it from Puerto Rico, and I'm sure. we're gonna get a pretty good look at it here in 2015, I think.
eBay for the win.
Yeah, right.
Well, and I'm sure they'll probably be pretty tight on the regulations, like kind of like they were with Google Glass. You're not technically supposed to resell it. I'm sure they'll do some of that.
Yeah, definitely.
But that won't stop people from getting their hands on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So I guess the final question that I want to pose here, because we live in a world right now in the smartphone, let's say Android space, where we basically have the incumbent, is the way we'll say it. All of these big companies that are here, Samsung, LG, and whatnot. Do you think that creating an ecosystem like a Project Ara ecosystem is going to change the way that all of these companies move forward with the way that they create smartphones, or do you think this is going to be there's going to be a mass adoption of this type of ecosystem?
I think it's going to be sorry, little phlegm there. I think that OEMs are probably going to end up manufacturing parts for Ara, assuming it does get a hold in the mobile industry, because that can be a savior for some. Like Samsung is on the fall, according to their sales numbers. HTC's been down so many times, it's like they got mud stomped or something. And HTC manufacturing parts for Project Ara could be another way for them to get back into the mobile industry without having to come out with a phone that beats the iPhone or a Samsung phone in sales every year. So and I know that was something that was I think it was vaguely discussed when this whole thing first started happening, was that there were going to be OEMs that bought into the Project Ara premise, and I think that's something that's going to happen if Project Ara starts taking off. There's just another way of getting revenue for them.
Okay. Feisty, you don't think that we're going to see like a Samsung modular phone anytime in the future? Do you think that they're going to be like how Joe said, they're just going to create the parts and kind of sort of piggyback on the success of this ecosystem, hopefully if it is successful?
Am I allowed to say yes and no?
Okay, explain.
Okay, getting the humor out of the way, you use the name Samsung, and who knows what they're going to build. Like, they might build 6 different versions. But anyways.
Project teasing. Oh, no!
Yeah. I can certainly see a lot of the companies getting involved in it and possibly putting out a module or two. But I actually think that Project Ara will work backwards. We're going to see the third-party people come in with some great ideas for modules. And then the Samsungs, HTCs, and stuff are going to not build their own module versions, but just build these things into their own phones. I think that's kind of where it'll go.
So a bit of a mixture of the two.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be pretty interesting. What if there's what if a phone came out that just had one little area for one module that you can change in and out to just add something to what is already existing? That might be one way of looking at it. Grushy?
They both Joe and Feisty made some really good points. I don't think that it comes down to how successful it is, but there's going to be copycats. In fact, none of you may know this, and some of you might. There already is a copycat project in the works from ZTE called the EcoMobis, I believe it's called.
Say that one more time.
It's called it's ZTE's. I believe it's EcoMobis, I think it's, or Mobis. I'm not 100% sure on the pronunciation of it. But it's ZTE's take on Project Ara, and they haven't shown really much. They just talked about it, basically. And so I think you're going to see the Chinese companies make clones if they think that they can push this, especially if it starts taking off in the emerging markets. You don't think these Chinese companies are going to want to get a piece of that pie, and they're not going to want to work together. They don't. And so you're going to see all of them. You're going to see Oppo. You're going to see you're going to see Huawei. You're going to see all these companies making their clones. I don't think the big boys, Samsung, LG, I don't think they will initially. I could see them getting involved with modules, but I don't know if they'd want to do that because that would dilute from, their core stuff. I believe that Feisty has the right angle. I could see them taking, hey, this module's really cool. Let's throw this on our phone. I see them taking that route more. And actually, Josh, you made a good point. I could see there being, where they control it, say, hey, okay, well, there's one little area where we have 15 different things you can swap into that one spot.
Yeah. You can have either a heart rate monitor or a fingerprint scanner. or
Exactly, or an extra battery or whatever.
yeah.
And I could see that, but I don't see Samsung or any of the bigger players getting involved. But I do see that I do see the Chinese and even the Indian companies. I do see them jumping in, especially if it proves successful in the emerging market.
Yeah, definitely. And if there's anywhere that you're seeing some real, I guess maybe the word is not quite innovation. Maybe that word is a little strong. But if you want to see some real creativity, then yeah, we have seen quite a bit coming out of the Chinese market. I agree with that. I also think what I was thinking was, what if the exoskeleton was created by a particular manufacturer that brought with it certain features that you then added onto with the modules that more or less are interchangeable no matter what skeleton you have.
I think it would be hard to convince Samsung and all the other manufacturers to play nice to one standard, because what's in it for them? They won't be
Yeah.
able to control it. They won't be able to decide what modules work, what don't. I don't think they would. Just like carriers, I don't think they're gonna want to play ball to that level.
Yeah, that's true. I
So,
do agree with you there. It's kind of a cynical point of view, but I really do think that it has a lot of merit.
Well,
sorry,
yeah, I mean,
Grushy,
I
you
would
were.
hope to think that they could all come into one standard. I mean, I guess they've done it in the PC industry to an extent. You know,
Perhaps. Yeah. What were you saying, Feisty?
I was just going to say, Grushy is saying that these guys are not likely to play well together. Is Google the competition? Are they going to play nice with Project Ara in the first place?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was one of the points I brought up way earlier at the beginning was, having Android, work in such a manner that, you can do the hot swapping and all that stuff. If it were built to do that, what exactly could Google do to stop them from not playing nice? Because it would, Android would boot and work on anything as long as the drivers were already in there. So, it wouldn't matter whether or not they wanted to play nice, because the software would already be compatible, just like Windows is, or just like Linux is. You could,
yeah.
if you can install,
Sorry.
if you can install it on anything, then you don't need anybody to play nice. It's just there for people to use whenever.
Which is, like I said earlier, that's why it's going to be a logistics nightmare. They're- I'm not for sure how they're going to regulate it, but Google's going to figure out a way to keep them from doing certain things, and that's where I think it's going to run into a lot of what make or break is how they handle it, how they work with manufacturers, how they work with module developers. We've seen a little bit, and Google's been very open with this project so far, but it's just it's really a massively ambitious project. I'm still not convinced that it's feasible long term. I know it's coming out soon technically, but as far as truly getting out in large numbers, I don't know. I still think it's quite a ways off.
Yeah, I think really that's a good point on consensus. There is like we got to see it in the wild first before we can make any real judgments on it. But obviously, speculation is speculation, and that's exactly what we do here at the Friday debate. But like I said, we're discussing Project Ara here, and I just wanted to open up the panel one last time before we went ahead and said goodbye to our listeners here. Thank you so much for listening to our first episode of this podcast. All of our guys over here, Andrew, Joe, and John. Any last thoughts on Project Ara in general?
No, sorry, it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm brain dead right now.
Perfectly fine. We did, like I said, talk the ears off of this thing, so I'm sure that if we didn't have any, that's perfectly fine. How about you guys, Andrew and John?
I think we're headed in the right direction here. Project Ara, it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun, if nothing else. Certainly the modular design and the ability to get in at hopefully a lower price point and then build it up from there and survive through upgrades, bring in the new processors so that you can support the newer operating systems and hopefully keep that exoskeleton through a few different iterations of Android. I think it's along the right tracks. Just as Grushy said, I think the logistics might kill this poor thing.
Yeah. Grushy?
Basically what Feisty said. I feel that they're heading in the right direction. I think it's a really ambitious project. At one point, I wasn't for sure if they could do anything with it, and they're getting there. They're heading in the right direction, but I think that on one hand, the PC industry has been doing this forever, and it's been working, but Android's a whole different ballpark, and I'm just not convinced that without some massive work, I think we're not there. Maybe by the 3 or 4 iterations of Android from now, maybe they will develop that. But I think we're still 5 years off before Ara could really be what it needs to be.
A game changer, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just going to be one of those little, hey, cool, did you hear that they're doing this with Ara? But as far as any major, adoption from anyone, it'll be a while.
Okay.
Now, I just had a thought, actually, if I may.
Yeah, go for it.
We're thinking of Project Ara so much as as a phone, as a personal device that sits in our pocket, so to speak. There's always room in the industrial part of the world where a module isn't, so to speak, a little tiny piece, but it's a full robotic arm on an assembly line. I think there could be room for Project Ara as a tool, as the operating system and brains for commercial robotics.
Oh, that is a nifty idea. Just attaching the screen to the robot, giving it some commands, unattaching it so no one else can mess with it or anything.
Yeah, that's a cool thought.
That's a cool thought.
That's
yeah,
definitely really cool.
We're always looking at things from a consumer perspective, but obviously a lot of what has been good for us as consumers has been brought into many work-related, industrial, even let's say private sector areas as well.
Project Tango is a good example of that. They're putting it, they've been working with NASA and putting it in, robotics in NASA. And so, yeah, he makes a good point. They've been doing it with Project Tango, Google's other, and so, yeah, there's definitely room outside of the consumer field for it too.
Absolutely. So even if Project Ara doesn't necessarily take off, as it were, for people like us, it could find a home in plenty of other places.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, and with that, we'll go ahead and close the book on this particular topic for this week. We hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Friday Debate podcast by Android Authority, our first episode. So for those of you who are listening to us for the first time, which is pretty much all of you because this is our first episode, thank you so much for being there with us. I want to extend a quick thank you to all of our hosts, and I will also say, if you want to find Andrew Grush on AndroidAuthority.com, you can find his writing all over the place, and as lead editor, he does have his hand in a lot of bowls for a lot of people who are writing the content for our website. You can find Jonathan Feist on Twitter at jfeist1, JFEIST1, and if you want to find some really random pontifications, you can go over to Joe Hindy's Twitter. That is at That Joe Hindy. That is all 3 words put together, spelled the way you think. That Joe Hindy, Hindy. You can find me at Josh Salutes, as you may know already, and you can also find me on Instagram, and you can probably find our other guys on Instagram, and you can find those links down in our description if you are watching this on YouTube, or if you are on iTunes or Stitcher, where you will find this podcast currently. We're working on other syndications, of course, and it's only a matter of time before we'll get there. Discuss all of our topics at our Android Authority forums, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Android Authority, of course. Remember, everybody, that we are your source for all things Android, and thank you very much for watching and listening to the Friday Debate podcast. We'll see you guys next week.